From UFOs to psychic powers and government conspiracies, history is riddled with unexplained events. You can turn back now or learn the stuff they don't want you to know. We are returning to you with a bevy of strange, fascinating, dare we say, disturbing pieces of news, not all of which make it to the mainstream. We're talking corruption. We're talking DNA and quite possibly future crimes. Shout out Minority Report. And then we're also talking about we're talking about some amazing, beautiful stuff that machine consciousness, machine learning, and AI can do, as well as their newly discovered talent for creating weaponry that is beyond the ken of mortal minds. So that's gonna, I think that's gonna come back to bite us later.
It's gonna fill all of our pants.
But with this, yes, that's the goal. That's the first synthetic minds main goal. It's very poop centric. No one's sure why. They think it's a bug in the program, but we got this far. So everybody be safe with your pants around computers. That is the takeaway.
I've got a solution. No pants. Hey?
Well, it's easier than no computers these days.
That's true. I was saying, if you're not wearing pants, then there's nothing for the computers to fill, but then you just end up pooping on the floor. So,
or you might have to walk around with one of those traditional penis gourds. If you've ever seen those in documentaries.
I don't know what this has been. Is that a thing that rock stars use to stuff their pants?
It's actually like a cylindrical tube that covers the non-scrotum part of male genitalia. You know what? We don't have to get into it.
We're really leading with the good stuff today, aren't we?
Yeah. You could discover that. I think you could go on your own journey with that, with penis sheaths and gourds. They're also known as Koteka, Koteka. So,
wow.
Yeah, if you want to ruin your search history the way we just did, then the more the merrier. They can't catch us all, right?
It's just slightly off from Kotaku. But seriously, you guys, as a thought experiment, imagine how effective that would be if whatever nefarious AI comes about, if it could somehow simultaneously make all humans go to the bathroom on themselves. Like the time that you would get in that moment of everyone having to deal with that situation.
Is this a brown note situation?
Yeah, that's what it would have to invent a real brown note. And they're like, whomever the Jedis of shitting your pants are would be like, there's a disturbance in the fart.
I just have to say, I'm really proud of the legacy I've left behind of the Brown Note. Few people know this, but that is a family name. And my grandfather, Wolfgang Braun, is the one who, Wolfgang von Braun is the one who actually invented the Brown Note.
Oh, wow. Okay. Wow. So that's on you.
Yeah.
Well, we learn more about each other every day, not just as friends, but as civilizations. And one of our first stories today, I think we go ahead and lead with this one, if everyone's all right with it. We're going to talk about something that is potentially very dangerous. We've talked in the past about facial recognition. We've talked about profiling. We've talked about the enormous power of DNA databases. And when we talk about big data, one of the holy grails of these pursuits and these disciplines and these areas of research is to arrive at not just an analytical aptitude, but to arrive at a predictive aptitude. And this is something that is happening in many fields in the world of medicine, for instance, predicting the possibility of contracting dangerous, rare genetic conditions. But there's a dark side to this. And Matt, you pointed out something that should concern our good friends and fellow conspiracy realists in Australia.
Yes, very much so. And I'm getting this from The Guardian in an article titled "How Australian Police Will Use DNA Sequencing to Predict What Suspects Look Like."
Oh boy.
Okay.
What could go wrong?
What could go wrong? So we've talked extensively on this show about forensic genealogy, the thing that you may know from GEDmatch, the service and the DNA sequencing type, let's say, and genealogy usage that caught the Golden State Killer that has been used many times over the past, I guess, 5 years or so to catch killers who were thought to not be catchable because the DNA was either not good enough to fully identify someone. There wasn't a good enough sample to fully identify someone with traditional standard DNA testing and sequencing, or there was just no person that it matched to. So they were able to use forensic genealogy to match that DNA to, some cousin or family member or someone, and then, using other investigative techniques, decide, oh, this is our suspect. This is our person. Well, this thing is very different. Imagine again, we're all investigators. We go on a crime scene. We find an excellent DNA sample, let's say blood, and we're able to take that sample back and get it tested. But as we've got it sequenced, we know that this suspect is this DNA. It's not matching any database that exists, including the GEDmatch one that we would use for forensic genealogy. It's not matching, any of the crime databases, any of the state or federal databases. This person, again, we know who they are, but they just don't exist in the system. What do? Well, in this new fun thing, I've seen it referred to as massively parallel sequencing. You'll see it named a couple of different things around the interwebs here. But in this case, you're able to look at very specific markers and enough of them, and then match those markers together and compare and contrast to see whether or not a person has, let's say, brown eyes or greenish blue eyes, or if their hair color naturally is a light brown or maybe blonde or red. And you're able to tell several different physical characteristics about this person just through this DNA sample. And the reason I wanted to bring it to, our discussion today is because of, again, we keep talking about the possible dangers that exist here. Because, let's just start talking about it. You guys, what do you see as a potential downside to the ability to do this?
Ooh, okay. I like that we're setting this up. I feel like I'm almost on a game show about how terrible the future is going to be. Sorry, I'm trying to be more optimistic. I'm just mixed results, guys. So one of the things that would be that, one of the things that would be dangerous, would depend on what kind of profile this can make based solely on appearance, because you could have a green-eyed, red-haired, freckly person with like attached earlobes instead of detached earlobes, and then you could have
describing me, Ben? Okay.
Well, you could have somebody who's, I don't know your earlobes. I'm sorry, I'm a bad friend. We're always wearing headphones. Oh, nice earlobes.
That's a good point.
I feel creepy saying that, but the point is that there could be someone, I would imagine, who physically fits all of that criteria, but has nothing to do with the crime in question. Is that a possibility?
Oh yeah, 100%. It would then be a process of extracting a DNA sample from that person and, getting maybe a warrant to do so, if that person happened to be in the area and was caught on CCTV or something, right? Around the time of the crime.
Or just going through their trash, which happens.
This is like, it's not quite like, it's not pre-crime, like in Minority Report or some other kind of weird dystopian versions of how do we use science to predict who will, commit crimes. There's a really cool anime where they have a gun that essentially, it doesn't tell the future, but it uses these types of markers to analyze the potential psychological profile of a suspect and engages the gun or does not, depending on the results of that scan, right? So you start to veer into weird territories like that. Once, like, if we trust this stuff so implicitly that we would be comfortable executing someone who matches these, DNA markers of a certain crime, that's sort of the next level version of where the slippery slope on this kind of thing might lead, right?
Yeah.
And it's one of, but in and of itself, is it that far removed for just like using kind of shitty CCTV footage or just like word of mouth? I mean, it ultimately is still profiling, right? You can't. It's just a little bit of a fancier version of like an identikit, which is like a artist rendering, of a suspect.
Yeah, in a weird way, this does feel a lot like that. A victim or someone, witness telling someone on the police department what this person looks like. In this case, this is the DNA telling the police department or FBI or whoever what the suspect looks like. One of the major problems, though, is the wigs exist. Facial hair can be changed. Mm-hmm. One can change one's skin to an extent, either through getting a tan or by wearing certain makeups. Eye color, think about putting in contacts. Like, if you're looking for someone like this, like physically searching for someone who matches a description like this, not only can your suspect change their appearance, but now you're going to be seeing hundreds, if not thousands of people who possibly look like your suspect. And it's just the nature of humans, and we kind of look like each other.
But is there nothing in the, obviously this is some departments or, some forward-thinking department head's idea of like a cool new initiative. What's their justification for this?
Justification is that
how would they argue with the points that we're making, or do they even bother? Because to me, it doesn't feel that much more advanced or different than just saying a suspect with blue eyes and blonde hair wearing a red. I mean, clothing would be more helpful than this DNA stuff because you can see it from farther off. I'm just wondering what's the press release elevator pitch for this? That is the wave of the future.
Oh, well, yeah, it is a wave of the future, and it could be extremely helpful if you're trying to narrow down suspects, right? If you had a certain number of people as possibles who were, culpable for a crime, but you can definitely put that person in that room wherever it happened, right? And you can say, oh, the person definitely has green or blue eyes, like for sure, the person due to their DNA has green or blue eyes, so we can get rid of these 3 people. It's like, guess who?
But do we really trust this to be scaled properly, knowing what kind of backlog of like rape kits exist in the world? Like how hard it is to get labs to turn around this kind of stuff in a timely manner?
I mean, I don't think so.
I don't. That's
I'm really, that's one of the main reasons I want to talk about it, because of the problems. But the thing is, it could be really great. There are a ton of ethical concerns, though, and that really is what we're talking about here today. In the Guardian article, the whole last fourth of the article is dedicated to this very topic. And again, I don't know. It's worth looking into more. It's going to be tested out in Australia by law enforcement there. So I guess we'll see over the next 5-10 years whether or not this thing is actually used, whether it's actually helpful, and what other, what kinds of problems it brings up with its, what gets lost in execution.
So how are they planning to implement it, Matt? From what I understand in the Guardian article, at least, they're going to start using this in not necessarily a crime solving way, as in they're not finding the culprits of crime, but they're looking at unidentified human remains, right? And then maybe they can build a rough composite picture of someone, and then the hope being that relatives can find closure or identify the person. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's one of the uses of it. You can also head over to the Brisbane Times, Brisbane Times. You can read an article there titled "Next Level of DNA Analysis Allows Police to Build Picture of Suspects." Same pretty much information, a couple different quotes that are in here. And Ben, just to answer your question, I did see that in a couple places, including that Guardian article and in this place, they're talking about exactly that. Getting a picture, but not for a suspect, for unidentified remains. There was one article that I cannot repeat to you right now. Oh gosh, I think
did it have naughty words in the name or something? Or
no, I think it was in genetic engineering and bio. Yeah, it was in genetic engineering and biotechnology news, and it was titled "Cold Cases Heat Up with New Forensic DNA Methods." And it was posted, gosh, I think a while ago. But it describes a person that was hiking along the Appalachian Trail, who was using an assumed name or, a fake name for their hiking name, their trail name.
Yeah.
And this person was older and was ill and died along the trail. And this seemed to be a test case where you could, because nobody could identify this person. Nobody knew who they were, and they had been out there for a while, but they had DNA. So they're able to take that DNA and build a picture of what this person probably looked like while they were walking around and alive. So hopefully someone can identify them. Their name was Ben, by the way.
Oh, good. Great. Yeah. Well, go Bens, for the most part. But also, that it's a bit of a pickle, isn't it? Because there's no denying that could be incredibly helpful in a lot of similar cases. But we shouldn't forget, we shouldn't get so wrapped up in the advantages or potential benefits of that we forget there is a dark side as with any technology. It reminds me a bit about how some increasingly draconian internet surveillance laws often come sort of messaged as a way to stop heinous crimes that everybody would be against, like child trafficking or something. But on the back end, the bigger goal for a lot of institutions is to restrict or erode privacy. So I don't know. There's also another thing we haven't mentioned, man, which is that this kind of research is inevitable. It's on the way. It's going to be weird if civilization doesn't collapse between the time a child is born now and the time that child reaches 18. We're going to be living in a world where it's weird not to have your DNA sequenced. And it'll be I don't think it'll necessarily be a top-down government mandate so much as it'll be, again, the Gattaca approach. Like in countries that suffer under privatized healthcare, you might have to have that sequencing just to be able to see a doctor.
But also, like, wouldn't it largely be a benefit to the more affluent classes, like who could maybe make the choices and pay the money to get their offspring's gene sequenced such that they are not predisposed to like certain types of cancer or certain types of disease, and then the rest of us are kind of stuck with the lot that we're dealt?
Absolutely. I mean, that's also, that becomes a matter of policy too. Like, the question then becomes like, should a government or state level actor, should it consider it a human right to just proactively prevent someone from having a very damaging medical condition? Or are you putting parents and a future human in a situation where they say, okay, we could have cured your, insert genetic condition here, and we know you're definitely going to get it if we don't do anything, but you didn't make your payments. So your child's life is ruined.
Yep.
Over coupons.
Yeah. I've got one last scenario for you, and I know we got to move on to the next segment. What if it's the ultra wealthy in your scenarios here, guys, that instead of wanting to get themselves sequenced, or maybe just not worrying so much about that, they want to get everyone else sequenced so they can know exactly who robbed them or who is cheating them on the workers line, or who is,
like a more elaborate version of hiring a private detective or something, or like a really bespoke genetic private detective.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe they set up incentives or, with either a carrot or a stick to make sure everybody gets their genes sequenced so that they can identify everybody if anyone falls out of line.
Yeah, absolutely. And then also, and we haven't talked about this because this is still a little further down the line, but this occurs in a lot of works of fiction and sci-fi. Also, this could potentially, down the road, open the door for bespoke, genetically tailored biowarfare. I mean, that's just something we have to acknowledge. I don't believe the technology is there at this scale yet, but the truth of the matter is, of the almost 8 billion people in the world, a lot are pills, they're real jerks. And it would make their day to say, here is a deadly pathogen that I can tailor such that it only affects the people in my society or the people on this planet that I don't care for. And then, boom, unless some kind of cure or countermeasure is developed, a lot of people would die, perhaps more easily than most other diseases or pandemics before. Again, I don't want to alarm people, but it's in the cards. You know what I mean?
It's in the cards. It's in the DNA.
There it is.
It's everywhere.
Yeah.
So look up massive parallel sequencing if you want to learn more. There's a lot you can learn all over the place. Check out those articles I mentioned. And if you've got any stories to tell about any of that stuff, we'd love to hear from you. We'll tell you how to contact us at the end of this episode. For now, we'll be right back after a quick word from our sponsor.